All right, peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. Tonight we are discussing Chapter 3 of The Color of Money, Black Banks and a Racial Wealth Gap by Mehrsa Baradaran. And I probably butchered her name, but please forgive me if I did. Please forgive me if I did. And so I have with me tonight my co-host, Brother Everett. Brother Everett, go ahead and introduce yourself to the listening audience, King.
Peace and blessings, family. Blessed to be back on the platform with Dr. Ma'at and the R.E.A.D Book Club. Brother Everett, president of the Baltimore UNIA Barker Clark, and ready to get into this powerful book.
All right, and we're missing our other co-host, Brother T. Brother T is here though in spirit. He's trying to hop on, and I think he's having some technical difficulties. So hopefully he'll be joining us soon. All right, family. But anyway, if you haven't read the book, I want to say this. If you don't have the book, you haven't read the chapter. Don't say, oh, they're discussing a chapter in the book, and I got to get out of here. Don't do that. Stay on because you're going to learn a lot. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the rise of Black banking. And so, a lot of us, Brother Ever, we heard from the celebrities, buy Bank Black. Remember Killer Mike, T.I.? A lot of these celebrities have pushed us to Bank Black, and without even, and I don't even know, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Killer Mike and T.I., by the way, to see if they even understand that this is something that Black people have tried before. It's like a lot of the solutions that Black people are proposing today, regarding economic solutions, political solutions. We've tried this stuff already, and it has failed. Right? We've tried this stuff, and it has failed. And so, in order really to create real solutions for our community, it's important that we know our history so we can understand what worked, what didn't work. We might modify what may have somehow somewhat worked, but it's important that we study our history. A lot of people just want to study history with the objective to feel good about who we were, what we did, and that's all well and good. But we should be studying history and using history as a tool to empower ourselves, to use history as a means to understand what worked, what failed before us, what worked, what we may need, what we can use, what we can't use, in order to better our circumstances right here in America. So I just want to acknowledge Brother Simsu Netcher. He's in the building. Peace to you, brother. Sister A Beautiful Mind is in the building. Sister Crystal Denise, Brother Donnie Williams. We they all in the building. And so appreciate you so much. And Sister Crystal, she said this. She said, no, we don't know because we think history isn't important. We don't even look at it to learn from it. I couldn't have said it better, sis. It's sad. It's like, that's why we're always on this hamster wheel, Brother Everett, in terms of, we try to progress. It's because we're trying to, we're like doing what our ancestors did. And a lot of the solutions, it failed, and then we tried it again in 2021, and then we tried it again, and we're on this constant hamster wheel
Without learning from the mistakes and making changes to do it better. Correct.
Absolutely. So this chapter talks about the rise of Black banking. But remember, prior to us going live, Brother Everett, I said I want to start on page 94. Prior to us going live, I wanted to start on page, is it 94 or 95? Hold on, family. Let me get it together. It's actually on the bottom of page 93 to explain how banking works. A lot of us, Brother Everett, doesn't. We know that we use banking to, we put our money in banks. We try to get loans for our banks, and then we understand that. But I don't think we truly understand how banks make their money. Some
Right.
people think that banks make their money off of the deposit, simply off of us depositing, but don't realize that the bank is reinvesting the money that we put on it. And Brother T talked about this last week,
Yeah.
fractional reserve lending. Peace to you, Brother T. Thank you so much for joining the panel.
Can you hear me, sister?
Yes,
We
I hear
got
you.
Great. Thank you.
Brother T, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I said last week you touched on
Yes.
fractional reserve lending. And so
Hmm.
I wanted to begin this discussion tonight by just describing how banks make their profits. All right. And so I'm at the bottom of page 93. So, family, just bear with me. Okay. It says banks create money and wealth through fractional reserve lending. Through fractional
I'm
reserve lending. All right. And it says right here by lending customer deposits, banks create new money. Okay. They multiply existing money in a process called the money multiplier effect. So it says a bank customer, and she's giving you an example here. So a bank customer, Alice, deposits her money in bank A. Her bank holds a fraction of that money as reserves at the bank and lends out the majority of it to another customer, Betty. Betty uses that money to buy a home from Celia, who deposits that money into her own bank, Bank C. That is new money created from the loan. Alice's bank deposit slip shows that she still has money in Bank A, but now Celia also has a deposit at Bank C, money that was not there before. Okay. So she says in this process, if Alice's initial deposit was 100 and it was lent out 10 times with each bank holding 10% for reserves, it would have created 900 of new money. The money supply increases from $100 to $1,000. This is the magic of fractional reserve lending. Every time a loan is made, a deposit is created. Okay? To repeat, banks create money or bank deposits by making new loans. This money multiplier effect is what makes banks the engine at the center of the economy. The new money is created literally out of thin air. This is what Alexander Hamilton meant when he said that banks allow capital to acquire life and become productive. Banks increase the overall wealth of a community by simply taking deposits and lending them out.
mm,
That was a powerful paragraph that explained fractional reserve lending and the money multiplier. This is how they make their money. And so tonight we're going to talk about the rise of black banking, but we're also going to talk about the failures of them. Why did they fail? They failed because they could not take advantage of fractional reserve lending and multiply the money because of segregation, because of racism, and because of segregation. All right. And so we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that. And so, Brother T, please read the first paragraph. I know how you start off the chapter by reading the first paragraph. So go ahead, brother. Please read the first paragraph. But I just wanted to begin, Brother T, the conversation with understanding how banks work so that we have that working knowledge, so that the audience will have
Hmm.
that working knowledge while we're discussing why they failed, you know?
Yes, great point. I'm glad you started off with that because that needed to be understood to see exactly why our ancestors failed in this aspect of economic building. Not that they didn't want to.
Right,
In fact,
exactly.
they were locked out once again by opposition, the ability to make capital what is meant to do, spread the wealth. So
Mhm.
I want to start off with chapter 3, The Rise of Black Banking, the first page. I want to read the poem because I think that this poem, which those in the chat that don't have the book, I don't want them to miss. Okay, the great northern cities. This is about the Great Migration. We were sold the bill basically that we had to leave the South because we have the racist South and we have what they call a mistress that wasn't so bad, which is called the North. So we left the North for opportunities, but we were met with a different hand, the backhand that still slapped us,
Come on.
basically.
Come
So
on.
the great northern city swelled with black migrants and put them to work. The poet of Harlem Renaissance, Langston Hughes, articulated the appeal of the northward migration. The lazy, laughing South, with blood on its mouth. The sunny faced South, and I, who am black, would love her, but she spits in my face.
Mm.
And I, who am black, would give her many rare gifts, but she turns her back upon me. So now I seek the North,
Mm.
for she, they say, is a kinder mistress. And in her house, my children may escape the spell of the South. So it was romanticized by Langston Hughes that as they left Mississippi for Harlem, for Chicago, to fill these jobs that promised them prosperity, they realized after time that this prosperity was something like a carrot that they dangled in their face just to
Mm.
get them out the South from making money to the North to still be held at bay by policies, by lack of banking, by lack of support.
Absolutely. And I just want to recommend a book by everyone. I read it's 576 pages. I had read every page of it, The Warmth of Other Suns by Isabella Wilkerson.
Mm.
And I don't know if it's Wilkerson or Wilkerson, but it's Isabella Wilkerson. I think that's her name. She wrote the book. I've read it probably about 7 years ago. And T, when I say it reads like a novel, what she does is she describes the Great Migration through the lenses of three people who experienced it. And
Mm.
so she sat with these three individuals who all came out of the South. One went to New Jersey, the other went to Chicago, the other one went to LA, and she talked about their lives. And so you were able to see what was, to understand what they were going through and what challenges they faced when they got to, you figure the north, that's Jersey. Then you have, northwest, that's Chicago. And then you have oh, sorry, New Jersey is northeast. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
I think I said west.
Mm-hmm.
It's east, northeast, and then you have Chicago, that's northwest, and then you have LA, which is on the west coast. And so it's a really, really good book. Like I said, it reads like a novel, so I was able to read it like in literally a week and a half. I just kind of went through it, but that's a really good book for those who are trying to really to understand the Great Migration. But just going back to what you said, Brother T, that's exactly what happened to our ancestors. They believed that when they left out of the South, and remember, prior to the Civil War, 90% of Black folks lived,
That's right.
95% of us lived in the South. And then after
Mm-hmm.
the Civil War, we began to migrate north. But like you said, they thought, as Isabella Wilkerson and even Langston Hughes said, they were in search for the warmth of another sun, right? So they thought that going north was going to be better, for them and for their children. But they found out that it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Brother Everett, Brother T, do you all want to build on why? What was when they got to these northern places? What were they faced with? What were the
Well,
obstacles? Mhm.
well, a lot of it, and we talk about banking, they was faced with segregation. And a big part of it was the creation of the ghettos. I think they mentioned in there how they started putting us in certain areas, and the black families were buying houses, and they were depreciating once they got the houses, and that's a major part of it because you get a loan. You say you get a loan for $100. Um, for a house you think is worth $100, but then the house is worth $50. So you've already
Mm-hmm.
lost out. And that was a very important part that we talked about before went on, Brother Tin. I'd love for you to elaborate on it. Was the fact that that was the issue with a lot of the reasons why white people didn't even want us in their neighborhoods, because once we moved out there and we started buying stuff, houses and stuff like property, the depreciation of their neighborhoods went down. So if we got in there and they couldn't stop us, they would move us out.
That's true.
Mhm.
That's true. What Brother Everett was mentioning was white flight at its highest case. Everywhere we had opportunity to go, when we got through the doors, we were met with a fleeing white cast or white family, which depreciated our home even more. So we found that the banks faltered just from the simple fact that they couldn't hold, we couldn't keep our homes. And what Dr. Ma'at read, which was profound, the workings of the bank, you realize that even though fractional spending created money out of air, what they had on land was assets, and assets was that safe haven, and that's what we could not build upon. Our banks could not build upon it. Us as depositors and lenders couldn't bank on it either because we were denied the ability to build and to buy homes. Number one, we was promised jobs when we moved north. That's another reason why we failed. We were promised jobs that locked us in to the ability to not produce any wealth. We didn't make enough, and we were limited to jobs um, to for our class basically. They wanted to keep us at a certain position. So these are reasons why I believe that the North did not work too well for us. And then you had also had politicians who did not make it any better as well. The ones you vote for, the ones you put into office, and you think that they would write the policies and they would back for you once they got into office. That wasn't the case for us, even when we moved up north. So even though we were not treated with the open racism, it was a veil that the racists stood behind and treated us just the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just want to point out that because I know we're talking about the rise of black banking, the same forces that created the same forces that created black banks, and I wrote this down, were the same forces responsible for their failure. So, as you said, Brother T, so we moved north, and Brother Everett, you said that we moved north. Because of, you know, racism, now we're segregated into these neighborhoods, these ghettos. Okay. We're being charged, a lot of money for rent because remember, they said it was low supply, high demand. So we're being charged a, a bunch of money for rent, for rental properties. Then when we do get enough money to buy a house, we're being overcharged for the house, right? Then we're promised jobs. We're not getting jobs. So we did not have the resources. We didn't have the money. Then on top of that, when you buy a house, you're not even in charge of the value of your house. Soon as we buy the house is depreciating, like you said, Brother Everett, earlier. Black folks moving in, white folks are moving out. So now your house is depreciating. So we don't even control the value of our homes. So then these black banks, and this is getting into the failure of black banks. So black banks, okay, let's suppose that black banks give, and I'm gonna give our southern names. Hattie Mae. Remember, a lot of our people came out of the South. So you had
Aunt
Ida
Hattie Mae.
Lou, Hattie Mae, Etta Mae.
Aunt
So
Mara.
Aunt Mara. So let's suppose the black bank gave Hattie Mae, right, or Lucille or Louise
Mhm.
a loan for a house. So she takes that money and she says, okay, I'm going to go buy a house in a black neighborhood. Well, the black bank isn't going to make any money on that because she's going to buy the home and she's probably going to be overcharged for the home in the first place because it was the white realtors. The white people owned the properties and you
Mhm.
dealing with white realtors who are overcharging you. So she went to the white realtor to purchase a home, right? She's being overcharged. Okay. That white realtor is going to take the money, Brother T. She's going to deposit the
Our
money
bank.
into a white bank, right?
Mhm.
But then the black bank who loaned the money out, they're losing because the value of the house is not really what it's worth. And then over time, it's depreciating.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're losing money, but the white bank has made some money. And
Assets.
so literally, she tells us
Yep.
that the only way, and I'm looking for it right now, that the only way black banking would have worked, and I'm trying to look for the page,
I know
She
that we
said,
talking about.
yes, it's at the middle of page 96. She said, if blacks could have accumulated all black resources into an all black economy with control of large businesses and ownership of property, their money would not have easily escaped the borders.
Mhm.
Blacks would need to be completely independent of whites and buy from, lend to, employ only blacks in order to control the black
In
dollars.
order to do it.
And so,
Mm.
see, a lot of our leaders thought that, oh, you can control the black dollars by just putting them in black banks, but they didn't understand how the banking system, well, the banking system that the white folks set up, they didn't understand how it worked.
Right.
And so it says right here, it says, though some whites and some blacks would have welcomed this outcome, such a world was out of reach because the black community did not accumulate enough property to sustain itself. The
Hmm.
underlying problem for blacks was that whites started with all the property and blacks with none of it. This basic economic reality created a positive feedback loop for whites and a negative one for blacks. Cycles that continue to have profound effects till this present day. This is still happening.
So
Go ahead, Brother T.
we have to unpack it. And you read that part, and brother Everett, I'm sure saw you moving as well. When you look at it, this is what Garvey was talking about: the ability for us to have ownership of everything. And what Benga was trying to do, and one of the first to do, is realizing that if I don't own the house, if I can't sell the house or buy the house, that money is not going to stay in this bank. So that's why he was so successful in the beginning, realizing that we have to control the buying and the selling and the ability to own that loan. And the bank was going to give out that loan. But fractional um, spending was not working in our banks based off the fact that even if you had those factors, somewhere down the line, that money was going to leave from an other going to their banks. So it was very hard for us to keep the money in the bank, even though we had someone who was sold it who was black, who bought it was a black, who gave the loan was a black bank. They showed in this chapter that that money is going to leave eventually. But most Marcus Garvey was saying, we need a whole black nation to ensure that that money was not going to leave. And
Come on.
that's what I loved about this chapter, is that it gave us the scenarios, the white bank, black bank, and realizing we need our own economic
Right.
system in order to keep it completely moving around the way capitalism can help us. The way it's set up now, it's going to eventually leave, and it's not going to benefit those who need the money. You
That's
can't.
right.
The money will not be able to be lent out to our community, to us and our community, because it's not staying in it. So our banks have to follow that blueprint to understand, and we as um, depositors and investors in the banks have to realize we have to create it as close as possible. And Marcus Garvey said we had to divorce ourselves from the system in order to build the
That's
system
right.
of a black economy. So this I love this far in the chapter and what we shared so far.
I wanted to piggyback off what you said, brother T, about the banker Benga, because he was phenomenal. He was flipping houses pretty much. He was
Yeah,
going because white people were moving out. He was going and saying, "Hey, you might as well sell it to me at a discount price. I can get it off your hands." He was fixing up the houses on his own. So he was probably one of the first to start flipping houses and reselling them. So
he
you
saw
would
he saw a
go ahead.
need. He saw a
Yes,
need, right?
yes,
That's a positive thing. It's like they said things are fixed when we see a need to be for it to be fixed. He saw where we're failing. He realized that, hey, we need to buy our own houses. We need to sell our own houses. We need a bank that allows this to happen. So he only took advantage of what he's seeing that was needed for us,
Mhm.
you know. But even though this brother did this, even though he followed the rules, he still was locked out in time and need, as we'll find out later in the chapter.
hmm
Okay. All right. Can we kind of delve into Garvey a little bit, Brother Everett? Could you get, for some people who may be listening, and I mean, I always say people who are connected to us know who Garvey is, but it may be
Right.
somebody that's in the chat that's like, I don't really know anything about Marcus Garvey. So can we talk about, Marcus Garvey, Brother Everett? I know you are, you got the UNIA in the background. So I think
Right.
that you would be the one that could go in on Garvey's, his philosophies and ideas.
Well, I was looking for the part in the book where she was saying what Marcus Garvey said about needing our own government, needing our own military, needing our own to be self-sufficient, our own nation, like you guys were saying. And a lot of people don't know that when Marcus Garvey formed, and he's the founder of the UNIA, he pretty much did that. He formed the African Legion, I'm sorry, which is our black military. We have one in our division. Um, the UNIA is kind of it's a government. We have a flag, we have a constitution to go to the flag. There's an anthem to the flag. There's a pledge to the flag. In August of 1920, over 20,000 Africans created this powerful government that he wanted to take over and create a nation. We needed a plebiscite, and that's when people come and say we're going to declare a government. Then you actually have to declare it. So in 1920, at the convention, they created the rights of Negro people, and there was 54 complaints and 12 complaints and 54 declarations.
Mm.
So this man was powerful in his own right, not to mention him having businesses and stores and stuff like that. And I'm glad you said that the will continues. But what he did in teaching his leaders was to learn from his mistakes. So we're starting that formation now. We have a farm in Liberia called the Liberty Farm.
Oh
We
wow.
we created a grocery store. The UNIA has called the Faka Rock, and it specializes in providing food for black-owned restaurants, and you can shop there as well. So we are reinventing the wheel, but a lot of people don't understand the power and the mentality that he had way back then to
Yeah.
create a conscious government for his people. And so he was just a powerful man. I don't want to go into too
Bro,
deep
bro,
into it, but
brother
what was
Everett,
brother say?
brother Everett, if you can go on page 81. I think that's what you was wanting to read.
It was 81. Yes.
Hmm.
I got it.
Yeah,
Thank you, brother T.
you're
Where's the
welcome.
black man's government? Demanded Garvey. Where's his president? Where's his country and his ambassadors, his army, his navy, and his men of big affairs? I cannot find them, and I declare I will help make them. He was called the Black Moses. So the UNIA is a lot of what he wanted to do, and a lot of people don't understand that. They think we're an organization, but we're more than that. We have a constitution for black people that we can help govern ourselves if we ever got sovereign land. So it's very powerful. And one last thing, we're a fraternity, actually the only true fraternity, and the aims and objectives. The first aim is to be a confraternity for all black people, and our symbols are black African Egyptian Kemet symbols, not
Mm.
Greek symbols. And a lot of people don't know that.
Come
So
on.
his
I
vision,
did not know that.
yeah, his vision back then was powerful, man. And there's so much to learn. So we always tell people when they want to ask about the UNI and join, like Brother Ross Marvin, who brought me in, told me, you got to do a lot of learning. And Garvey teaches us a lot, teaches you about leadership, teaches you how to speak. And message to the people, he's teaching you how to save money, and how to do things. And he's always telling you to learn from his past mistakes. And that's how powerful a man he was. Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think that anyone who is interested in understanding Garvey should read, what is it, Philosophies and Opinions
Hmm.
of
That's a
Marcus
good one as
Garvey.
well.
Yeah. And that was put together by his wife, right? Amy
I,
Garvey.
Amy
Doc-
Garvin,
Dr.
yep,
Ma,
and
Dr. Ma, you have an interview with his son, correct?
Yes, Dr. Julius Garvey. That was
yes,
a
I
real
forgot.
powerful, powerful interview. So, anyone who's looking to check out that interview, just go to YouTube, type in Dr. Ma'ad and Dr. Julius Garvey. I'm telling you, Dr. Garvey, he moved my spirit, just listening to him speak and talk about his father. I mean, it was a phenomenal experience. I mean, it's phenomenal, I'm sorry, interview. Brother Shimsu Netcher said, but we need to start with Booker T, industrialized education. I'm glad I put this comment up here because Marcus Garvey was inspired
That's
once
right.
he read the book Up from Slavery by Booker T. Washington. And so the author said that they actually had a conversation and they were supposed to meet In fact, Professor James Small told me that Booker T was going to, I think, help pay for him to come here
Yes.
to America. But she said that they never met. I
I
think
thought they did meet.
I'm about to
That's what
say
I thought.
Professor James Small told me they actually met.
They
That
met. That's
Booker T.
yeah.
Washington paid for him to come to America. But in here, she wrote that
Based
they
off the
meet
years.
that Booker T died before he got here.
Yeah, based off the years, I think that she placed in this book. I think we got to look to see when did um, Marcus Garvey come to America, and when did Booker T pass away. That's why she made
If I'm
that.
not mistaken, and I could be wrong, I apologize. If I'm not mistaken, he actually, and I think it's a message to the people, he actually met with Booker T, but I could be wrong. And then right after that, he met with W.E.B. Du Bois, and he just wasn't impressed with W.E. Du Bois. They didn't see eye to eye, but I could be wrong with that. But I think he did meet, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, that's what Professor James Small. So when I read this earlier, I was like, "Oh my goodness!" I said, "Hold up!"
Hmm.
I thought they did meet. I thought they
Yeah.
did meet. All right, and so then in the book, she talk about different banks, different black banks that were created, the Benga State Bank and the Douglas National Bank, and I believe you brothers were building on Benga earlier, and you said that he followed everything correctly, and then that brother he ended up in jail. I think
Yes.
they ended up charging him with fraud and all kinds of stuff. He lost his
What?
bike. But look, brother T, I want to point out he lost his bike at the time when he had $800,000 worth of mortgages, worth
Yeah.
of asset. Well, I won't say worth of assets, but
Mhm.
$800,000 worth of mortgage loans was that he had in his possession. But his bank still closed because of he didn't have when he got into a bind, he couldn't liquidate,
Well,
these assets that he
this
had. Go ahead, brother
this
T.
this is the thing that was so upsetting about this.
Mm-hmm.
He found out a way to make his bank work, and
Hmm.
and survived up to the point of before the depression. And he paid into this organization, and the organization was called the Clearinghouse, Chicago Clearinghouse. Right. This is supposed to be insurance for any bank that was going through a downturn time. And when he paid into it, he rest assured that his depositors and people who invested in the bank would be okay in a time of despair. When he got to that point, they said, "We're not helping you."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
They made a point. They said they're not going to help a little black bank. They use another word,
That's what
another
they did.
a black bank, because they're not going to support you. Even though this man paid into something that he helped build, which is this organization. He was the only bank that went down during the Great Depression, and
Well,
he was
Mhm.
jailed. He was jailed, but he was later on bailed out by, and I think a petition of 10,000 people signed it. Some people who even lost money with his bank, they said because of his character,
Mm.
he was out of jail, but soon he died penniless, and he at the age of like 65 years old, I believe. So this man did everything right, and people gave him some a lot of problems, like, hey, he took on too much, he was a swindler, but no, he just fell prey of trying to build this bank bigger than what it was. And before he went to jail, he used his own money in order to put into the bank so depositors would not fail completely. So,
And that was sorry to cut you off, brother T. That was book Frederick Douglass did the same thing. So we had some powerful people that was putting in money to banks that succeeded, that had failed. And that is correct. I just went the message to the people, and he never met him, but he did take the invite, and he did go to Tuskegee. And after he
Okay.
left
yeah.
Tuskegee, he went to CWEB Du Bois. But yes, he kicked out his own money. And I wanted to ask you, and I don't know why I'm going blank, brother T, because he had a bank, he was paying fees. Um, so if something was to happen to the bank, he could get bailed out.
All
And they,
banks,
yes, and he still was denied.
yes. He
So
was on
that's terrible.
in that time before the Great Depression. Bingo was attempting to build a second bank, and the Great Depression slowed that down. So He had money. This man was making money, as Dr. Ma'at mentioned. He had assets, $800,000. He had the bank had, I believe, 13 million
Mm-hmm.
dollars, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe that was another bank. I mean, but let's stick to this story. When it came down to him about the bank about to fall, the clearinghouse just said, no, we're not gonna we won't allow you to fall. This man paid into that in order to go to the next level, but they could not let this man do that because he was doing what how he was doing banking how it was supposed to. They gave this man so many accolades during this time period, saying that he was a premier banker. He was
Hmm.
he was a banking like how it was supposed to be done. He was doing so many great things. They could not allow this man to succeed. So in this chapter, we've seen so far banking done wrong way,
Mm-hmm.
banking done with support. Because we got to remember when Rockefeller came into the mix to help a bank, he gave everything the bank needed as support, helping the black people, but he never gave the blacks the ability to invest in the stock.
Right.
He did an opposition. He said, "I'm not doing anything like that until I see the bank to be profitable." The bank became profitable. He still did not give the opportunity to do it. So you see all these examples of the banking not done correctly, banking done with white support, banking done with black support, and still falling because they had ability to close the door. So this is another great chapter so far, exposing the blueprint of what we were dealing with, trying to move toward economic inclusion.
I thought one thing I thought, and thank you for that, Brother T. One thing I thought was interesting was New York, when she talks about New York and how New York had a huge population of black people, but they didn't have any banks,
Yep.
right? They didn't have any black banks, okay? And so she talks about, she provides us with reasons why, right? Why
You're
they
talking
didn't
about
have one. But to come to find out, it was a white bank that was right there in Harlem. Um, the
the,
Chelsea Bank, and it was a white bank that was situated right in Harlem, and black folks were depositing money right into the white banks, just like they did with Rockefeller. Like you said, brother T, just like they did in Rockefeller's bank, by the way, it was called the Dunbar
Dumbo.
National Bank. And
Mm-hmm.
so these were two banks that were sitting in Harlem, and black people, she tells us that we welcomed these banks with open arms. We took our hard-earned money and we put it in these black banks. I'm sorry, these white banks, while the white banks were transferring the money. It says all of the money is transferred downtown to the home office where it was loaned out to white customers. So these were banks that rarely gave us loans. It said that most of it was cash transactions.
Mm-hmm.
So we put our money into banks that didn't give us a loan. These banks transfer our money to their home offices and then loan the money out to white people. And they made a bunch of justifications as to why they did that.
You
Isn't that
know,
something?
Dr. Ma, I'm sorry, brother T. You know, Dr. Ma, when
Something.
she was talking about why they was creating laws, talk about New York and banking laws to make it hard for black banks to even be created. And I was thinking about the movie The Banker. Did you ever see that?
No,
I
never
still haven't
saw
No.
it.
seen it. I heard about it. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, man, you got to
Never
see that
saw it.
movie. It's about some
The
brothers,
gangs.
and it's a true story. They used a white person to act like he was the black guy, but he wasn't that guy, and he actually got them the bank, and they was loaning out to black people and everything. So that's what I thought about. I just wanted to add to that. But I'm sorry,
Which
brother T.
which bank was it in this chapter that talked about um that the community asked for black clerks and black representation
Shall
in the
see it.
bank,
Shall see it. Shall see
and
it.
they gave us Roscoe.
They gave, that's what, after Africa the Great, he just said that. He said, yep, they got two black clerks to make sure they didn't lose their black
Hmm.
monopoly.
They said you can't get no blacker than Roscoe, so they got they got Roscoe to be the director, the one director in this big bank. So it's just to the point that Dr. Ma'at and Brother Everett made. The representation was pushed, but we could not do anything. But they required that we gave deposits because we knew the power that we now know the power of fractional reserve banking. the ability to loan the money out for them to make more money and them not to give us money. And remember, we dealt with this all the way up to the Obama time when he was president. And they said, why did you bail out the banks? And they said, we need to do an audit of these banks to see how many of these banks that you have bailed out that gives black families the ability to start businesses and also the ability to buy homes. And he said, because before you bail them out, are they doing right by the community that they're in? So this is still going on basically today as well. Another a great point this chapter brings out.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on the Richard Wright Sr., the founder of the National Negro Bankers Association,
What page?
NNBA. It's on page 83 at the
Okay.
bottom. And so this was a brother. It says black bankers were not political nationalists, but they were open. They were operating under the same foundational principle that black banks would lead to black economic power and independence. And so there was a brother by the name of Richard Wright who founded this black association. And it said, so basically, like you said, Brother T, for the support, because remember, you had Benga, who was a part of, what was the name of that organizational association, Brother T?
Clearhouse, Chicago Clearinghouse.
Right, but that was run by white folks. So he was paying dues,
Mhm.
with this clearinghouse. And then when he got into a bind, no one bailed him out, no one helped him. And so you have Richard Wright, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of just freestyling. I'm not looking, but I believe that Richard Wright was the person who he said, okay, let's start this association so that we can support each other,
Mm-hmm.
so in times of trouble, in times of need, but then also we can get the black press on our side to convince black people that they should put our money into our banks. Because remember, at this time when these black banks were closing, people were losing like their life savings. And
Mm-hmm.
so black folks were done. They were like, look, I'm not putting my money back in the black bank. So we lost faith in black banks. And so with this association, he wanted to create like a relationship or a partnership with the press or black press to encourage black people to put their money, our money, into black banks.
You're right.
So he wanted to do that. I know he wanted to create an association where black banks could lean on each other in times of trouble. But I feel like I'm missing one more thing that he was working to do. So I gotta look. It was one more thing I feel like he was trying to do.
You want to read the mission of the league?
We're talking about to promote the general welfare part.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about, Dr. Mott.
No, I think that
Okay.
was really pretty much it. I think
Okay.
that was what I did, because I'm looking right now and I don't have anything highlighted. But I do see that they had a few conferences. They had one in Durham.
You was talking about
They
him
had,
trying to use the press to promote the black banks. Was that it?
yeah, I already talked about that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mentioned that. All right, so he talked about that, and then I think that was it, guys. I think that was it, brothers. I think that was it. And then we already talked about fractional reserve banking and how that worked, why black banks failed. Um, we talked about the segregation. We talked about black homes not increasing in value. Oh my goodness, I feel like we kind of
Yeah, we knocked it out.
we knocked this out. Yeah, I'm sitting here looking like, is it something that we did not touch on, Sister Crystal? Like, is there anything? Oh, okay. This is one thing that we didn't touch on. I know y'all said she gonna find something. I'm on page like 98, 99, two
Yeah,
pages.
Carter G.
Yeah.
Woodson.
Carter G. Woodson, and how it was a brother. Remember, they said it was one brother back then. I believe his name was Abram Harris.
Yep.
And he created or wrote a comprehensive study of black banks called The Negro as Capitalist in 1936. And they said he was the only person that said, oh, black banking is not going to work. This isn't going to work. And it said that Carter G. Woodson blasted him in his book, The Miseducation of the Negro.
Yep.
And Carter G. Woodson said the highly educated Negroes who have studied economics at Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Chicago will say that the Negro cannot succeed in business because their professors who have never had a moment's experience in this sphere have written accordingly, right? And so he was the only person, Abram Harris who said, nah, I think these black banks aren't a good idea. But you had a lot of, our prominent, leaders, they were huge proponents, for of black banks. And so he kind of, it was blasphemous at that time, to
Well,
go against banking black. But Abram Harris was correct. I mean, he was correct. It really, it wasn't a good, it wasn't a good idea. He said it was the first, his study was the first to challenge the notion that a
right.
segregated black banking system could even work. And so Carter G. Woodson criticized him. And then there was a brother, remember Billboard Jackson, Billboard Jackson, he was the Commerce Department official, Billboard Jackson. He said, well, they didn't work because black people didn't support them the way they were supposed to support. We didn't support the black banks. Carter G. Woodson said the same thing. We didn't support each other. We didn't support each other. But as we've read and discussed this history, Brother T, black people did support. I mean,
Yeah.
some of these institutions had started with 2 million, 3 million, made up
Mhm.
to $12 million. So black people absolutely did
We
support these institutions, but they failed because of forces beyond our control. Go ahead,
we
Brother
did,
T.
we did not see the backdoor policies. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? The ability. See, the thing is, like, I would love to go back to see what Abram Harris, the Negro capitalist, no, the Negro as capitalist, 1936, because he was our first black economist. So just to see exactly what he's seeing something, maybe the understanding how money works, in order to say this is not something's happening that we are not looking at. And as big as Carter G. Woodson was, and plus Miseducation of the Negro, who has not read that book? One of my favorite books. But he's seen something that no one has seen. So I wonder exactly what's in that paper, what's in that study that we can learn from and probably see today. And you're perfectly right. You're right, because I think that we say that, oh, we not enough support. We still say that today, but we don't understand. We don't understand, or did not understand exactly what was the inner workings. And it's some of the things that I kind of was amazed when I saw this. And it's funny how Carter G. Woodson made that shot. He knew that he didn't say his name,
No.
Harris' name, but because he was the only leading black economist at that time, it was known. It's like, dang, our elders was doing shots back then too. You know? He's like, I'm gonna write this in this book, and he know exactly who I'm talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so it's like you said, we didn't have an understanding of how things work. And I would close by saying, hence the need of, black nationalism and Pan-Africanism. There it goes. There it is. That's why we need this global political, economical, system. We need it.
Mhm.
So there are folks that's pushing back on Pan-Africanism right now. We're going to give reparations, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that, and we're going to do. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't fight for reparations, because I know
Mhm.
someone to take the sound bite and say Dr. Ma said we shouldn't fight for reparations.
Right.
I'll leave it as that. I'm not going to go in.
Yeah.
All I'm going to say is hence the need for black nationalism and Pan Africanism.
I agree.
So you can go
Yeah.
on and keep fighting. That's just not my front. You all can keep on fighting and asking the white folks to cut you a check. While you all are doing that, I want to build with brothers here and
Mhm.
in the nation and throughout the diaspora to create a global system that can combat the system that we're currently being oppressed
Doc-
by.
Dr. Dr. Ma'at, I'm always curious because I love the way you summarize this chapter. And Brother Everett, I'm sure you would agree with this. Can you give a good summary of this chapter that we just read for us on the panel and for the chat? And then after you do that, after the information that's been shared, give one solution that we can do today with the information that we found in chapter 3.
Absolutely. And I'm looking at the comment section. I hear you, Brother Ali. You could do that, brother. Brother Ali said, I'm doing both at the same time. I say, brother. You go on and you keep the fight. You keep the faith, brother. All right. You keep the faith. And then Blockchain Revolution said black internationalism. I say. That's where I am. That's where I am right now, family. And so, if I had to summarize this chapter, Brother T, I would say that this chapter provided us with a wonderful overview on the creation of black banks, why they were created, under what conditions they were created. And we know that they were created due to racism, due to segregation. So, like she says at the end of I think, page 100 in that paragraph, she said that these things, we tried to create this segregated economy because we were locked out of the mainstream economy. So I think that this chapter this author, she did a wonderful job just discussing why black banks were created, who created them, why they failed, what attempts our ancestors made to maintain black banks. Um, she talked about the forces that were behind their failure. So I love how she broke down fractional reserve banking and how banking systems actually work. This is how they multiply the money. So we know that mechanism. And we saw that when we tried to apply their mechanisms to our banking institutions, it failed. I mean, so it's kind of like, I wrote in the margin on one of my pages, hence the reason why black capitalism hasn't been effective. So it's like we want to operate the same way they operate without their resources and power. I want to say that one more time. We want to operate the same way. So we say they practice in capitalism. I'm going to practice black capitalism. That will be okay if we had the same resources and power. You want to play the way they play, but you don't have the resources and power. And so that's what we said. That's not what we said. We were actually forced into it because we were locked out of
Mm-hmm.
the mainstream economy. But we thought we could play the way they played, Brother T, but we just didn't have the resources and we didn't have the power to do what they did. So we have to do it a different way. And in my opinion, brother, our way is black nationalism and Pan-Africanism.
That's right.
So to me, and so you say, what's the solution? That is the solution to me. Black nationalism and Pan-Africanism.
I agree.
Thank you.
Brother T, go ahead. I thought you was going to add on. You didn't want to add on? That was
No,
it?
look, I don't think we should do anything but put a period
You said
on
put a period, boop.
what you basically just
Exclamation
said.
point. Bang.
That's right there, because I mean that's the summary, and because this chapter did an excellent job in laying everything out that you said. It gives us a bird eye view of our present day situation. So for us who say, what's the solution? We saw all the potholes. Now we know how we should be able to walk across that street without without any distractions, because we see clearly what we need to do. We have to understand banking. If we don't understand banking, we have to understand how important for us to support each other in the buying, selling, and lending aspect, and the ability to allow that money to go back and out to the community as we move forward. Even on a small scale, we can start there. So if, like Dr. Ma'at, you put a challenge years ago to my household, you said, are you buying your black batteries? Where you buying your batteries from? Where you buying your toilet paper from?
That's right.
Where you buying your Q-tips from? Where you buying your toothbrush from? Your toothpaste? If I'm not putting it into a black company, please do not talk about black economics, capitalism, or business supporting, because I'm not putting the money into a business that will support me. So we have to look at what we can do on a small scale to realize that, hey, understand that bank must hit a check mark before we put our money there. The bank must have check marks, and we may have to create our check marks based off this chapter. Is it lending to? Am I depositing my money into this bank? Is this bank lending to black people? May I see your financials?
Come on.
Mm-hmm.
If I know that, hey, maybe you need to go check to see what this bank can do. All banks have their financials. If you go to their website, you can see exactly where their money's going. How many blacks in this community bank with you? How many people receive loans? What is the story? Can you please share? We may need access information before we go a step further. We may need to know, do that bank or this institution meet our checkpoints before we go
Yeah.
any further. That's a start because what's been happening is we've been bamboozled. You know what I'm saying? We've been you know what I'm saying we've been blindfolded, not understanding how this stuff works, investing, fractional lending, how banks actually need money from other banks to cover its debts at night. And if a small black bank can't do that, it's not going to last. It may,
Right.
what I'm saying? So we have to understand. So the first three chapters of this book explain exactly how it looks, how the map looks. So we need to know how we should move from this point on based off that.
Absolutely. And I just want to plus one what Brother Mansa said, Mazali Mansa. He said, can't operate without our own self designed paradigm. This has been the bane of Africa in
Yeah.
and out.
Out.
I agree.
Come on. I agree 100%. Our own self designed paradigm. What works for us?
Yes.
Because black folks, we were trying to do what was working for the white folks and thinking, all right, it works for me, but I don't have
Mhm.
the resources and power they have. So, it doesn't work for me. So he said, without our own self-designed paradigm. Thank you so much,
Hmm.
Brother Mansa.
Yeah.
Brother Everett, do you have any closing words, brother?
This has just been a powerful bill, and just piggybacking on what you and Brother T said about getting into black-owned banks and trying to, we all want to support our black-owned banks, but we have to reinvent the wheel, like you said earlier, Dr. Mott. We can't just keep doing the same old thing. We got to figure out how we can take advantage of our banks. So what type of lending should we be getting? And we have to just look at what's best for black people and our black banks. That's all I got to say.
Absolutely. And so next week, we're going to be discussing chapter 4, The New Deal for White America. So, family, get your book, The Color of Money, Black Banks and the Racial Wealth Gap by Mehrsa Baradaran. Again, next week, we're going to be talking about the New Deal for White America. See, President Roosevelt sold our ancestors on the New Deal. Remember, he ran as the people's president. And so
Mhm.
he came with the New Deal. But his New Deal, it was for white America. It didn't help my grandmother, in the 40s. It didn't help black America in the 40s. It was a New Deal for white America. All right.
Land
And so,
grab.
yeah, land grab. So we're going to be talking about that next week, Brother T. I can't wait, Brother Everett, to get into this. Because remember, I shared with you that my grandmother, and peace be upon her soul, Myrtle Bailey, she loved President Roosevelt, so much so that she named my father in honor of President D. Roosevelt. My father's
Mm.
name is Delano because of President Roosevelt. And so I just really want to get into this next week and dig into what Roosevelt didn't do for black folks because, like I said, we thought what he did applied to us and it
Mhm.
didn't. And we were bamboozled. So family, join us back here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. All right, for the R.E.A.D Book Club discussion on chapter 4. Have a black-tastic week.